I'm a photo consultant and a photo rep. On the repping side, I represent a small all-female roster of commercial photographers, and I help them, you know, market their work and estimate on jobs, that kind of thing. And with my consulting side of my business, I work with any photographers on their marketing and portfolio curation and that kind of thing. So what I'm showing you today with the reviews is exactly, I put people's websites and print portfolios together to best represent who they are as a photographer and how they fit into the commercial photography industry. There are a few people that have been submitting that are not necessarily in the commercial photography world. And I've been kind of, sometimes I have reviewed everybody that I've drawn randomly so far, but if something is overtly consumer, it's probably going to be something that I'll skip because it's not totally relevant to everybody who would be watching. But a lot of times there's a crossover factor. As we know, there are a lot of people who are going from consumer to commercial, or who shoot both and are trying to navigate how to best represent that on their website. And so that kind of information is helpful for people, because there are a lot of you who are trying to do the same thing, who are trying to kind of show how you can shoot for consumer clients and how you can shoot for commercial clients. And then there are those hybrid clients who are a little bit in the middle, which we've discussed a little bit already. So excuse me. I really welcome questions, because that helps to direct the conversation that's most going to be helpful for you. And especially if the photographer that I'm reviewing is in the chat, it helps to sometimes be able to ask them questions so that I can direct how it's best going to help them. So, okay, let's get started with the review today. And today, I will just transfer that in. Today, we're going to be reviewing the website online portfolio for Lily Louise. I happen to know Lily Louise, so I do know, I'm familiar with her work, and I'm familiar with, we do know each other. So she is in the chat, which is helpful, because then we can, I'm going to get rid of my website. We can chat back and forth if there are any particular things that I want to ask, which is nice to be able to do. Okay, so here we go. Let me just open chat. Okay, Cameron asks, what is considered a consumer client? A consumer client would be a wedding photography and family portrait photography, or portrait photography in general. And then, commercial is a very broad term describing anything where somebody is using it for business purposes or profit. And however, there is, what commercial means is quite broad. And usually what I'm talking about with commercial is more on the advertising, larger business scale, rather than personal branding, which would also be considered commercial. But personal branding, entrepreneurs, even small business, a lot of those clients are what I kind of put into the category of hybrid. They are commercial, yes, but they are used to kind of engaging in more of a consumer way. And there are a lot of reasons why they do, but a lot of it is because a lot of the people that they end up working with are more on the consumer end of the photography business. And so they're used to seeing things like packages and, a structure and a way of looking at the work that is more on the consumer side. So my goal, and when I'm talking about a website, I'm talking about it, how to get it into more of a commercial context. So working with clients in more of how a traditional advertising scale, even editorial client base would be looking at, that they want to see the language that they speak and the way that they want to see their work presented. So does that answer your question? Okay, so let's get into Lily Louise's work. So this is the landing page. As you can see, it's a slide show. I did actually forgot to also check what template this is, but it seems like Squarespace. Maybe you can confirm that as well in the comments, but it seems like a Squarespace website. I go through, and this is the landing page. So top is slideshow, and then scrolling down, I get a grid of images with some copy and a sense of her work. And then another bit at the bottom. Okay, so when I'm looking at this and I come here and I'm thinking about it from a commercial perspective, so to me, this feels like a consumer website, more on the consumer side, or actually more on the like small business personal branding. So this is like a very good example of a website template that would work very well for somebody who's trying to appeal to a small business or personal branding kind of clients, because it has that, there's a scroll down. The scroll down, this vertical scroll is very much how the consumer websites tend to be, and especially with things like that, this at the bottom, let's work together, inquire below. There's an entry, there's a form to fill out, there's a submit button. All of that is more on the consumer side, as well as the presence of copy, especially on the landing page. Copy, is going to find its way into commercial websites on the about page, on the contact page, and occasionally in other areas as well. But on the front page, on the landing page, it's definitely speaking to me more from a consumer perspective. Also, the fact that I'm seeing some wedding work and kind of a variety, like, the coffee shot and a few other things speak to me of personal brand, or sorry, small business is what I meant to say. And kind of, and wedding cakes and stuff like that. The work itself is beautiful. And I love this like little GIF that's in the screen. I think incorporating motion into a website is really, really great and very, very important nowadays. So I definitely recommend and encourage people to incorporate as much motion as possible if they have that ability. If you work with video in any capacity, meaning video or cinemagraphs or GIFs, all of those things are really great. It also really helps make your site more active and dynamic and engaging. And I do like this grid. I think the grid is interesting. For me, I'm on a 27-inch monitor. So every time you view a website, it's going to look different on different size monitors. So some of the images I find a little bit too large, but I do like the grid, and I do like how it is kind of not traditionally gridded. It's not like a very structured grid. I like that it has some variety to it. I'm not loving the copy on the front page. I would prefer to see that on an about page. And there isn't an about page, so we'll talk about that as well. But it's something that I definitely feel would be, I want to see it from a commercial standpoint. I want to see it on an about page. If the goal is to appeal more to a consumer or hybrid audience, then on the front page is totally fine. But I still would add an about or bio page, because even those kinds of clients, the reason that they have this method as well as the top menu method is so that there's different ways to find the same information on a website, because people view websites in different ways. But from a commercial standpoint, I avoid the this on the front page, the vertical scroll. I avoid this on the front page. I feel like commercial clients want to be able to use the menu to navigate where they're going to be going and what kind of photographer you are. And so I really use that menu to tell them right away, as well as, the imagery that's shown. I'm just going to check in on the comments for a quick second and see what's going here. Oh, okay. It's WordPress flow themes. Yes. Okay. Yes, I've worked with flow themes before. I find that, yeah, it definitely is geared more towards a consumer market. And so I have found it difficult to make it into like what it should be for a more consumer or commercial market. Uh, but as I was saying, the I feel like the menu is definitely how you want to direct your viewers and tell them what you do, where they're going to go to find what they're looking for. So in this case, when I go to the menu, it's telling me Dockside Green, Sook Cottage for Western Living, Inspired Cooking Cookbook. It's telling me project names, which can work in some cases, but it doesn't tell me what I'm going to be looking at, like what kind of photography I'm going to be looking at. I tend to use descriptive words because that helps the viewer, especially if they don't have a lot of time, be able to go to the section that they want to see, the kind of work that they want to see. If they have to do a lot of digging, a lot of looking around into different, like, okay, is Dockside Green, I'm working on I'm doing we need a portrait photographer or whatever. Is Dockside Green where I go to find that? Is Western Living, they do some, Western Living has some interiors. So maybe if I go to Western Living, I'm going to find interior work. But maybe I feel like maybe is not, like, if they have to dig for what they're looking for, it's not ideal because they then might leave and go look for something else. I also feel like the landing images are not telling me a lot about what she does. There's a portrait, there's more of like this editorial shot, there's some food, and there's a kitchen kind of food shot, and another portrait. So and it's totally fine because obviously a lot of photographers will shoot different things. And especially in the lifestyle context, you're going to be shooting different things. But I don't get a sense here of her style overall and what I'm being invited to look at on the rest of the site. So in this case, I feel like just the grid would be totally more explanatory. I feel like just leading in with the grid, getting rid of the slideshow at the top and getting rid of the copy on the front page would really change the feel of this and make me feel more clear on what kind of photography she does and what I'm going to be looking at when I go in. However, I do feel like some of the image choices in the grid are not necessary. There's a lot of different kind of styles and a lot of different subjects. And I know that she does shoot a lot of different things, and we'll kind of get into that as I go along because she has really amazing work. And I don't feel that right when I get to her site. Her work is like really edgy and cool. And when I come here, I get more of the, it feels more kind of light, and that's consumer to me. When things are light and fluffy, it feels more on the consumer side of things and less like editorial edgy kind of feeling, which is the work of hers that I know the most. And but again, it really depends what kind of clients she's trying to attract with this website and what she's trying to do and say with it. So if you feel like you want to say anything about that, Louise, then you can let me know in the comments, and then and then I can speak directly to that. Linda is asking, what are some of the accepted terms for the different commercial photograph categories, galleries used in commercial photography? I'm not exactly sure what you mean. I think maybe you're talking about the menu and what you would put as a title in the menu. If you can confirm that that's what you're asking, like what categories you would use to direct people in the menu area. If that's the case, I would use things that are, as I said, more descriptive. So things like yeah, I would avoid using project names. There are other ways that you can incorporate projects to show how you would put a story or a project together. But I tend to stay away from that with my curation for a variety of reasons. But you know, you know, you want to explain to them what they're going to be seeing when they go in there. So it could be descriptive, like portraits, landscape, still life, food. You know, it really depends what kind of photographer you are. It could be, you know, if you're just a portrait photographer, it could be broken down into subcategories like editorial portraits and um, uh, studio portraits and environmental portraits, and, you know, like different ways like that. If you are a lifestyle photographer, it could be, you know, where the lifestyle is happening, like at home or outside or that kind of thing, or adventure. And you want to direct people as to what your specialty is. So if you're a lifestyle photographer and your main focus is restaurants, then you want to let people know that in your menu. So you would say, you know, could, and it's very complicated to explain, but basically when you know, while I'm curating a gallery or a website, I usually will discover what those gallery names are going to be based on what the work is. And so oftentimes when I create what collections and what portfolio sections there are going to be, it's based on the work and how that photographer needs to best present themselves. So, and what kind of clients they're trying to attract. So if a photographer has a lifestyle work that kind of covers a lot of territory, then it's how to best piece that together so that if somebody visits their site, they know, okay, they shoot interiors, they shoot people in interior, they also shoot restaurants and food, which also has interiors in it. It also has their home, you know, section also has food in it. So you can see that they shoot food, they shoot restaurants, they shoot all of these things. But how can I best illustrate that in the menu so that when somebody visits, they are clear right away, if they're a restaurant, that they're going to go to the restaurant section. If they are if they are a designer or interior or architect or in that world, they're going to go to the interior section. So you're telling people this is where you should go to see this kind of work. And now they're going to probably go to a variety of areas to see work, but you want to, as best you can, direct them right away to what they want to see. Does that help? Is that what you were asking? Yeah, okay, that was right. Cameron, do you prefer having the menu names on the side of the website vertically versus gallery boxes that you click on? Good question. That it totally depends on the I always work from the imagery. So when I'm starting with somebody's work, I start in Lightroom and I pull everything into the collections that I piece it all together, and it takes a lot of time to figure out what those sections are going to be. And sometimes it changes along the way. And then also what style work they have and how is it best shown? Is it, you know, for landscape photographers or architectural photographers or interiors, their website, it might have like big images that take over the whole screen, and where their menu goes is really going to be dictated by what kind of work they do and what kind of imagery they have, and how it's interfering or adding value to the rest of the work. So you know, with a grid, for example, like if we were just working here with Louise's website, this feels a lot better to me when I'm looking at it just like this and not seeing the top stuff. The menu pops more. Excuse me. I need to drink some water. But on the other hand, I could very easily see this menu existing on the left. The problem with the left menu is it also, the other factor is logo. So a lot of times a logo will look better on the the left menu or on the top. It really depends what kind of logo it is. Sometimes more like square logos will look better on the side rather than on a top bar. Um, because of the way that it's structured, but and whereas the top kind of one line, this is fine when it's centered like this, but if you put it over to the side and then had the other menu here, it might look off balance and odd. So it really depends. There's no rule, and I don't have a preference for one over the other. It really is decided based on the work. Does that help? Okay. So here we are with Louise's work again. So again, I really like this grid. I think that it's interesting and dynamic. I would prefer it, I think, a little bit wider. So I know that a lot of the templates you can you can make it full page, so almost going all the way to the edge and having a few more of this style grid where it's kind of, I like the overlapping. I think it's really interesting, and I think really suits her work as well. It shows like you have the opportunity to show kind of, one of the things when you're putting together a grid is you can pull work that's not necessarily from the same shoot or the same body of work, but it can still illustrate how you can create a story and show a story without actually showing a particular project or a particular story. So in this case here, you're seeing like this food and this food, the food here and the drink on the table, and they kind of tie together, even though they might not have been shot on the same day. And so as a viewer, I can kind of see how she could create different aspects of a story, but I'm not necessarily being pulled in to look at one project or one body of work. I do think, though, one of the things here is that, with this kind of shot, which is more what I know of Louise's work, is more this, like she does these really cool, where did they go? Yeah, Polaroids. And they're so interesting and cool. And I want to see them more on her website. And I feel like there's something too pretty about this template that isn't really working with the work that I know of hers, where I want to see something, I want to see more like either more clean and simple or more dynamic and edgy, I guess. And the wedding stuff is throwing me off. And I know that's something that a lot of people struggle with because they do have wedding clients, they do work with weddings. And I know, but it takes me out as if I'm looking at it from a commercial perspective. And I would definitely say keep your wedding work as much out of a commercial website as possible. Because I think that in like it's the same, it's a wedding kind of concept, but it has that like pretty and light kind of feel. And then, next to it, we're looking at something that's more like editorial documentary feel to it. And it doesn't go together for me, both from a client standpoint and from a visual standpoint. So from the client perspective, I would say as well, it's just like when you're building your website, it doesn't necessarily need to be built to attract every kind of client it shouldn't be built to attract every kind of client that you do work with and want to work with. It should be built to appeal to the kind of clients that you want to be working with and that showcase your very best work and the work that you want to be creating. And I know sometimes that's confusing for some people to figure out what that work is that they want to be creating. But I think like when you're editing your work, that's when you can really see what your best work is, and how to showcase that. And sometimes as well, like in her case, it really could be done by, a lot of it could be done by creating galleries that show you know, categorize her work so that she can still show like this kind of food work and stuff, and also the stuff that's more like the Polaroids and stuff like that, because they do have a similar editorial feel to them. Whereas when it gets into the styled wedding stuff, it feels totally different. Does that make sense? Um, Louise says, I was really torn as use a slideshow or not. I just thought it looked a bit plain without it, but I see that it might work much better without. That's a good point. Yeah, so I think like I sometimes do like the slideshow, and there's nothing wrong with the slideshow. I just think in your case, it it's not really pulling the best work forward that I know your work to be. So I don't think it's serving a very good purpose here. I feel like I also feel like this grid is just more dynamic for you and for your work. So I definitely, and clean, and it pulls me into the work rather than looking at the design of the website. And I feel like right now the design of the website is taking over and your work is not being brought forward. And that's what I want to see. I want to see your work. I want to understand who you are as a photographer, and I want that to happen right away. So again, we'll we'll go into this. I do feel like there isn't an about section on the website, and I definitely would want to take this into an about section and the client list and everything, so that it's something you click into rather than being visible right away. I also would really like more of the Polaroids incorporated into the website, because I feel like they're kind of hidden at the bottom in this way, and the copy to me isn't. I do like this is kind of a fun way to navigate over here, but it feels just more on the consumer side of things. But there might be ways to like do that still in an interesting way so that it does set it apart, and you can almost like, I do like how it has this, separated screen, and there's a Polaroid feel over here. And this is a case where having a little bit of description is nice. So you have something that speaks to what the shoot was about, how you went about it. And that's something that, could go into a creative section, and it could be displayed in a more creative and interesting way to incorporate copy and the imagery, so that there is some context for people who are looking at it, and that they understand like maybe the artist statement, or what the process was, or what the challenge was, or something like that. I think that could be very interesting, like almost as if this was its own page and its own section, where you looked at it like this and you could look through each of the images. I would take this part out. The font, I think the fonts are throwing me off quite a bit because they're just a little too frilly. I think something more minimal would speak to me more. And then being able to flip through the images, I think that's cool. Like as a section, that would be great. But at the bottom of your main page, it gets lost, and it doesn't do the work justice. And I think that the work deserves to be given more attention than that. Excuse me. So I'm going to go into now. Let me just check if there's questions. No. So feel free to ask questions. Let me know if there's anything you want me to expand on or go into that I haven't addressed. So when I go into the menu, all I see is recent work, and that's just showing me, that's just showing me some recent projects that she's worked on. And there's 1, 2, 3. There's 3 projects. So I feel like, and I know that Louise is a prolific shooter. She's shot a lot. So I know there's more than this. And I would personally prefer that there be a section called portfolio that has, categorized into the types of, organizing the work based on the work rather than based on the projects. Because when I go into the projects, I go into Dockside Green. Okay, first of all, I do also want to talk about a technical issue here. So I'm on a 27-inch monitor, I do realize, but you have to also realize that people are going to be viewing things on larger monitors. And all the images are quite blurry, and that lets me know that they're probably reading the specs to a website when you're working in a template is really important. If they say, that the minimum size and this is the recommended thing, definitely follow those, because what's happening here is this might look good on a laptop, like a 15-inch monitor or a 20-inch monitor, but on my monitor, the images are looking not good quality. The quality doesn't look good. And so I definitely would address that, because when I'm going here and I see that, I think then you're not going to be providing quality images. So that would be something definitely to look into. When I go here, I am, the grid is here. And it is organized by project. So this, I can tell this is a project that Louise shot that is probably for a development company or something like that, where you're showing, a variety of what the end client needs to show how the neighborhood is and what people would do when they go, and all of the different perks of living in that area, and the lifestyle component of selling a development residence. So I understand that as a viewer, I know that. And I think for some people, for some clients, that might be helpful for them to see how you can do that. And there are ways, I think, of incorporating this idea of projects into a website so that it does show the more story side. However, I don't find that I find that it, first of all, can get very overwhelming very quickly for clients if suddenly there's, 25 projects, and you're looking at projects and you're like, I don't know where to go. I don't know where I'm going to see what I need to see, because I don't know what Dockside Green is. I don't know what Sook Cottage for Western Living is, and I don't know what Inspired Cooking Cookbook is. I do think that also, because I'm only seeing 3 projects, it makes me think, and this is just, I know that this is not true, but it makes me think that she doesn't have very much work. And so then that makes me think that she might not be able to fulfill a larger job because she doesn't have that much experience. I know that's not true. So I think that when you show it, there's a risk of, when you show it broken down like this, there's a risk of saying, I don't have that much experience, but there's also a risk of overwhelming people if suddenly this grows to 25 projects. And it also, like I said, the descriptive part of it, I feel like her work will be better shown, broken into categories that are more explanatory and showing the best work from those bodies of work. So it's not, showing one project, but showing how everything, and like I said earlier, you can still get the sense of how she would tell a story through work that's from totally different bodies of work. Like, if I see this outside of a project sense, I wouldn't necessarily know that it's all shot from one, that it's all from one shoot. However, I could take this shot and this shot and this shot, and then, something from her other section, like this one and this one, and tell a completely different story, but it's still a story. And the person that's looking at it doesn't know that they were the same shoot or not. And what they're seeing is that you understand what it takes as a photographer to tell a story in a documentary way. And it's more about the style and more about your knowledge as a photographer of how you can carry out that story. So it doesn't matter that they're not connected. It doesn't matter that you're telling them these are the shots that I did, because sometimes putting an image in here can dilute that message. And the last thing you want to be doing is showing work that is just not as strong. So when you're showing, work from a variety of shoots and pulling it together to tell a different story, that's stronger when all of the images in that story are strong, rather than showing all the work from one project, where some images are strong and pulling you in, and some are just adding value but aren't good on, I wouldn't say good, can't stand alone. So I think you want to have images in your portfolio that can stand alone, and not just that are making one visual story. Does that make sense? Okay, no questions right now. Well, I need to drink some water. Okay. In the case of the copy on these pages, so if a photographer does want to do, as I said, I would not do solely projects, because I find it, as I said, for a lot of reasons, I don't want to repeat them, but I do feel like they need to be driven home sometimes. But it is, I would definitely reconsider how these sections are put together. However, if you wanted to have another section that was called projects, or put it somewhere else on your website in another kind of creative way, so that people could view things as projects, because I agree there are times when that's helpful, and how you go about that, there are a lot of different ways. I'm not going to go into all of them, but if she did want to kind of show it this way, which I think it does look good, like there's nothing wrong with this. I think it's beautiful. I think it tells a nice story, and I do like it, but I don't think it's enough. So that's kind of my point, and I hope that's clear. But yeah, as a project in this case, I do think the copy is nice, because it does give context, and it tells about the the shoot, and maybe the process, and what the assignment was, that kind of thing. So it's an opportunity to expand on that. Again, I find the copy a little bit too flowery for her work, and for what I know of her style. I do think the copy works here, but not as her main section. It would be like another section somewhere else, in a more hidden kind of way, where people can view things as projects, and there may be copy attached to it. But I wouldn't do this as a main portfolio section. Okay, Cameron asks, what are your favorite template website builders? So it really depends. I've used several. I've worked in many, and they all, a lot of them can work, but there are different pros and cons to a lot of them. I'm not for this particular portfolio as flow themes. I'm not crazy about them for commercial. I think they work well for consumer clients. I've worked on a few wedding websites in flow themes, and it works well. A lot of people like, the WordPress platform, and if you're working in WordPress for photography, I've used WordPress for so long, and I just transitioned, because I find that for photography, it's very challenging to find themes that work and do the things that I want them to do for commercial. So as much as I like WordPress, I don't think that it's the best. I haven't found a template that I like for commercial photographers. When mostly I direct people to Squarespace and Photofolio. Squarespace being more financially accessible, Photofolio being designed specifically for commercial photographers. So the things that I want the site to do for commercial photography, the Photofolio is hands down the best. However, their price point is higher, and with both of them, you have to wrap your brain around the back end, because they're totally different, and depending what platforms you've been working in, it can be a little bit of an adjustment. Squarespace works great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. There are definitely templates that work better than others for the purposes that I'm working with people on. But those are the two that I usually suggest. But I've definitely worked in others that have been fine with what we need to get done. The one thing I find about Squarespace is that there are generally limitations. There are a lot more limitations, because the difference between the two is Squarespace works with templates. So you basically, you pick the template that you want to use, and then you're stuck with the limitations of that template. And if you can't do a certain thing, you just won't be able to do it. Either you'll have to find a developer who can add the CSS to do the certain things that you want to do, or you just have to deal with what it is. Photofolio, on the other hand, is not templates. All of the websites, so they have basically like pre-designed things that you can then select as a starting point for your website, but all of them, you could end up with exactly the same thing for all of them, meaning that there's a lot more customization that you can do. And not only customization for the whole website, but you could make each page very different than the other. So I find that the flexibility for Photofolio is a lot better, but it really depends on your budget. It depends on, you know, your comfort. I have had photographers who are not comfortable working on the back end of the Photofolio website. So it really is a variety of reasons why you might pick one over the other. So back to Louise's website. Again, the information at the bottom, this feels more on the consumer end of things, just too large and designy in that way. I don't know how else to explain it. Okay, so let's go to another. We looked at this one. We looked at this one. Let's look at Inspired Cooking Cookbook. So again, beautiful work. Like, yeah, I'm hungry. The quality, some of the quality, again, I think it's on the larger images. So I think it must be because on the smaller images, no, this one looks as well. Yeah, I would definitely check into that because you want all of the images to look really good on whatever screen somebody's looking at. Beautiful food work. But I feel like, and I know this, like looking at her work, I'm like, I know she has a lot more food work than this. She could have a whole food section. She could have a whole lifestyle section. She could have a whole portrait section. Like there are, I think, ways that are going to better represent the work, the quality and depth of the work that she does. And right now, the design is taking over. The work is not coming forward. So the only other options we have, so this is the gallery, and then we have a contact page and a search. So the contact page here, as I've mentioned on a lot of the other reviews, is forms are not great for commercial websites. She does have her website as a link, or her email as a link over here, which is definitely the preferred way of doing it. So you can see her phone number right away, and it's clickable, which is great. So if I were on my mobile device, I could just call her, I could email her right away, and where she's based, available for travel. So this side is really helpful information. This side is taking up too much of the screen. If you wanted to have both a form and the information, great. But this is really what you want to have is very clear direction as to how they can get in touch with you right away. Okay, so the search bar, that makes me think that there's a blog attached to this. And when I click on it, where am I going? Oh, here. So I feel like the search bar, unless there is a blog, attached to it, is unnecessary, and also makes me feel like it is more of a blog template, which I think Flow Themes might be kind of geared towards blogs. I know a lot of food bloggers use that template. So so I would get rid of that. And then when we go to Instagram, first of all, when you have a link on your website that takes you away from your website, ideally you make that a link that will open it in a new tab, because you don't want people navigating away from your website. If I go to your Instagram, then I'm gone. I'm not coming back to your website. So I would definitely change that so that when you click on Instagram, it opens it in a new tab rather than a whole taking over your website. So when I go to her Instagram, I'm here, and this is this is more the work that I'm familiar with for Louise. And again, and this is something that I've had a few times with the reviews, is that the Instagram is where I get way more of a sense of the photographer and the kind of work that they're capable of and known for. And I just, like, there's beautiful work here that I just don't see at all on her website. And I would really rather see all of this work presented in a different way on her website. And then geared more towards an editorial and commercial audience. Like her work is very editorial and like, it's just, I get it way more here. Does anyone have any questions? Louise asks, what about format? I have also considered them for a template. So format, yeah, I've worked in format and I like some of their templates. They are definitely still geared more to the consumer audience. But I've made some of them work really well for commercial. They have, I'm trying to remember, but yeah, they do have some nice ones, and I would definitely suggest them over what you have, what is it called? Flow themes. I would definitely say format, you'll have more success. Cameron says, awesome. I'm doing a new website and was leaning towards Photofolio. Yeah, definitely. I'm not affiliated with them at all. I don't get anything for recommending them, but I think that they're just the best for commercial work. So there you have it. I use Photofolio for my website, and that was, oh, why are you guys seeing my website on the thing? Are you seeing my website or are you seeing Louise's? Oh, I know why, because I paused my thing. That's why. Okay, never mind. Okay, so yeah, Photofolio, definitely for commercial is my favorite. I use it for my website because I was using WordPress before, and because I'm showing commercial photography work on my website and showcasing photographers' work, and I was running into a lot of problems with how to best show their work and get the design things to happen. The one thing that isn't great about Photofolio, or the one thing that doesn't work for me as well, is their copy and image integration. If you want to have any copy on your website for like the about page and stuff, it's easy, but it's a little bit tricky. You kind of have to do a bit of coding to make it work. Whereas Squarespace, you can kind of integrate the two a little more easily because things are in blocks and you can move things around easier. But I mean, this is the big point that I want to make, is that when you're working on a commercial website, there shouldn't be a lot of copy. It should be heavy on imagery and showing your work and making them look at your work right away. And that's the thing that I'm missing in Louise's. I know she does great work. I love her work. And yet when I go to her website, I don't feel that right away.